All right, this is a demonstration video for how to roll out pie crust for making our pumpkin pie. This actually is a mini pie pan. We already have some dough made for you. Get into that recipe separately, or you may have already made this dough. And that's been portioned out for this size pie dish into 3-ounce portions. That seems to be the right amount. All right, the pie dish we're working with today is actually 6 inches in diameter to the top, but the pie dough itself is going to have to go down to the inside, up the sides, and have some movement on the edge, around the edge. So I cut one of these apart to actually illustrate that we're looking for more of an 8-inch diameter, okay, an 8-inch all the way across diameter of dough. All right, we have these rolling mats, but only 5, so not one for all 10 stations, as a guide that would show you how to roll this out into a certain diameter. But we're going to be working on the surface for these pies because we're making so many of them, and then you might be able to use this as a guide, but not doing the primary rolling on this sort of mat. Okay, so that's kind of a reference on the side. We're going to want to work on a clean surface, so at home, if you have a countertop you can roll on, go ahead and clean that off, but put some flour down. If you have a countertop that's maybe made with tile, you don't want to get dough on that, so you may have to lay down a piece of parchment paper or something else. Okay, our dough ball hopefully has been rounded a little bit, and it's still chilled and cold coming out of the fridge. You can see chunks of butter here, there, and everywhere. This is a pie dough that was made with like 3 parts butter and 1 part shortening, I believe, the ratios. Okay, so what I'm doing first is using the palm of my hand to kind of flatten it out with adding a little bit of flour before the rolling pin takes over, and I'm going to be really gentle in rolling this out, and I'm going to actually be trying to get it in all directions as we do this, but then also flipping it over from time to time so that it does not get all rolled out on just one side and flour sticking to the countertop. All right, so the camera may not show you, but there are, again, big chunks of butter here and there. That is a good sign, because that's cold butter. That's going to lead to a really flaky crust. All right, we'd like this to be a circle as best we can, but we can tear it up and pull it off. And so if I check this, I have at least an 8-inch diameter. Okay, and this, okay, it's so small I can probably pick it up with my hand to put it into the pie tin. But when you're working with bigger pie dishes, the more traditional like 9-inch round, then we'll sometimes use this rolling pin to wrap this around to lift up the dough. All right, but don't have to do that. So when I put this pie dough inside and try to push it down nicely so it gets to the bottom and coming up the side, okay, and then we're going to be cleaning up the edges of this. All right, so if you have to reposition that, try to pick it up and pull so you don't end up tearing. All right, so as far as cleaning this up, I'm going to want to have this come up to the edge and do a little design, perhaps, of crimping. Okay, so that's 2 fingers from the inside and 1 from the outside. And if I have an extra piece of dough here, I can kind of pull that and tear that off, as I may need that on another pie crust. Okay. And the key part is when I'm doing this is that I don't want, so say this was back on here, I don't want a big piece of pie dough that's over the side that's going to get baked into the pie tin itself. All right, so that is one pie that's ready to go. Now, this recipe for the pie dough has ice water in it. That's what kept the butter so cold, and there's a little bit of water in the butter, and because of that, it's going to produce steam. All right, so this pie dough, when it gets baked, the water is going to produce steam, and it's going to perhaps get this to be a little bit soggy. And so what we're going to be doing for this to get ready so that we have a crisper pie is do what we call a blind bake. So a blind bake is I'm going to bake this by itself empty, and that is very critical for me to bake this all the way through if I'm doing a pie like a banana cream pie, where the filling is made in the stovetop and made with like cornstarch and all. That's going to thicken as it cools, and it's going to go into a pie crust that's already done. Our pumpkin pie is going to get baked in the oven. There will be filling on top of this that would keep this, from bubbling up, but my experience has been that the pie filling being here insulates this, and this doesn't get baked all the way we want. So we're gonna go ahead and blind bake that. And what that means is I'm gonna take a fork, okay, and poke holes in this in the bottom, maybe about 4 or 5 times, maybe a little bit around the side. I'm docking the dough, so these holes are gonna let steam escape, okay? If I don't do that, this may puff up and then it's gonna bake like an upside down hubcap, and then you can't put filling inside. And then to keep it from burning, after I've docked this, pricked it with the fork, I'm gonna go ahead and line it with foil to kind of protect it from some of the heat. But even with the foil on here, when I go to do a blind bake, I may find that this may still puff up. And so there are things called pie weights that are like little ceramic beads that we don't want in here. They're gonna fall on the floor, etc. Some people may use dried beans, like pinto beans, to put inside. Then we have hot beans that maybe you get rolling everywhere. We're just gonna put in a Pyrex dish, okay? Be it this clear one or this white one. That's gonna weigh this down so it doesn't puff up. This will be hot when it comes out, okay? And this blind bake is gonna be 425 for about 10 to 12 minutes, okay? And it's gonna be going on this larger sheet pan. So I'm gonna in time lapse roll out the rest of my pie crust and get them blind baked, ready to go in a 425 oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. So we'll transition to time lapse. All right, and we're back in real time. That is 4 total pie dishes. They're all gonna be on this 2/3 sheet pan because we're gonna have 1 pie per person to take home and 1 pie to share. And so if there are 3 people in a group, we need 3 pies, 1 for each person and 1 for them to share. But you need to leave room for the other group. These all need to be baked off together because the rack is set in a certain location, because once we put pies inside, we're gonna have foil around it and something we call a shield. And we gotta make sure there's not a rack above it or the foil is gonna get pushed and bake into the pie. All right, so 425 for about 10 to 12 minutes and then we'll be back. All right, we're back. It's been 10 minutes on the blind bake. I'm gonna go ahead and take these out, take a look at them. Oven open! You guys take these out and some on top of your stove. We're gonna be keeping the oven at 425 for the first part of the baking. And the key thing is to recognize that these ovens are hot. So you have tongs to set them off to the side. And then we also want to repurpose this foil. So when you guys pull this foil out, hopefully it doesn't take the pie crust with it. It's already gotten a bit done, and I'm gonna be happy with that. 10 minutes in. But I'm gonna tell you that if this were gonna be a pie that we were going to fill with the filling that was going to thicken after it's been cooked on the stove, like a pudding type filling, I would want this to be done more. So it might take 12 up to 14 minutes to be done all the way through. All right, so this side here, you may try to fix that a little bit once you put the filling in, but that's going to stay put. We're going to get the filling and talk to you guys about how to get these things set up for what we call a shield.